I've wanted to do an update on our chicken composting system for a while. Somehow it just slipped by, but I thought today would be as good a day as any. I thought it'd be nice to get things super tidy and organized before making the video, but why not just also make it real? And here's the during of an upgrade in the chicken composting system. We're bulking it out with a lot more carbon. You can see the sawdust there, I'll talk about in a moment. But overall, things are moving along at a really nice clip. There's some new experiments, a whole bunch of new hens, and so I'll explain all that in this video. The first bit is in the last few weeks, we got a hold of some new hens, new to us. These sad looking ladies, here's one. You can see one over there. These are, we got 25 new hens from basically a CAFO, a pretty rough farming situation. They were going to be sent off to somebody in Manhattan, so we got them here. Took them a few days for them to get used to our scene. You can see their feathers are starting to come back in. This is another lady here who's new. Pretty wonderful though. It seems like in a system like this, we can have hens that have had their beaks burnt off in a really, really rough first year or two and fold them into the system, and they seem to thrive here. Another lady. You're missing your feathers, but I know they're gonna come back. In fact, if you look in here, this is the winter run and then the summer dust bathing area. This lady here was a new one last year, and so is that lady. In fact, most of the red, orange colored hens that are in here were new to us as of last year. And it's beautiful to see a year in this system, and their feathers come back in strong. They're really healthy. Their beaks never fully heal, but the compost system is soft enough that these are ladies that looked that haggard last year, and now seems like you're pretty darn healthy and happy, so that's wonderful. There's some new infrastructure in the scene, which I like to talk about. Some compost rings, which I'll show in a moment, and then what I call the duckweed vending machine, which is a metal galvanized tank. We have a mesh over top so the hens can walk on it. They really like to sit on top of here and poke around and get the duckweed. And this is just rainwater, so it's a nice backup. We've had some really hot days. I'm sure a lot of folks in the US have dealt with some extreme heat, and having a big reservoir of extra water for our hens feels really beneficial. So they can poke at it from these two sides. The duckweed in the middle is protected from their browse, so it can keep expanding. And you can see I just simply use this little plastic container to head over to the pond, which is a very short commute, where the main duckweed population is, and I can refill, quote unquote, the vending machine that way. And even though the chickens poop into this water once in a while, the duckweed and the perennial water celery that we have in here are both really nutrient hungry plants, and they absorb that excess nutrient and turn it into really nice hydrating, nourishing food, which on a blisteringly hot day feels super special to offer up. We set these compost rings up again, trialing a whole bunch of different dimensions and proportions, erring a little bit on the side of columnar, a little bit taller, and pretty much every plant you see popping out of here are all volunteer weeds. And what we will do is add in some more sweet potatoes. I've transplanted in a few amaranth on the top, some other crops. And throughout the season, this compost can mellow and deepen, and we can be harvesting greens to send back to our hens. So far, the dominant volunteer are the cucurbit clan. There's a whole bunch of random squash, and that's kind of fun. We'll let them sprawl for a while and cover the ground. But what I'm looking for more are these brassica, the mustard types, kale types. Here's a random tomato, which will flop over and provide some food for them. Sunflowers. It's pretty amazing the weed seed, quote unquote, load in here. It's grasses and greens and all sorts of nice things. I think once we get some deeper rains, we'll start planting the sides out a bit more, maybe some chards and beets and some other big leafed crops. So the compost can mellow and age throughout the season, and we can cut and come again material for the hens. Once in a while they can hop on top and browse through. But so far it's a funky looking system, but it seems to be working pretty nicely. We've been struggling to manage the amount of excess nutrient in our system this summer. So we bring in lots and lots of food scraps. We have now over 70 hens, and so we want to make sure they have free choice on as much food as possible. So that's been a bit more labor. It's well worth it, but we've certainly found that we need a massive amount more carbon. And so recently I made a connection with a new friend, a fellow named Scott, who does takes old barn wood and turns it into custom furniture. And so these are all planer shavings and sawdust from his operation. And I can go over there and he fills my truck up for a really reasonable price. And so we're loading every pathway super deep with this straight carbon. Chickens love working through it. And it's a short commute then. Anytime we have aroma or excess nutrient presenting in any of our bays, we can simply cap it with sawdust, work it in, and start getting things back on track. So this was raw food scraps about 3 weeks ago. Certainly not finished by any stretch, but the ratios are getting a lot better. The aroma's pretty darn clean. It's pretty earthy and rich, but not offensive. This is about 3 or 4 weeks along, so pretty amazing. So side dressing and mulch around tomatoes and squash. This is certainly ready to go within the first month. For seeding and the like, it would need to mellow a bit longer, but pretty pleased having good caches of ample carbon right next to where our nutrient loading is. It's a design direction that would encourage folks that are just getting into this to think through how much carbon can you store in your walkways. This little channel through here is kind of nice. We're on the west side of the winter run. I think this encapsulates or captures the sense of this space pretty thoroughly. It's breaking down a little bit here or there, but jammed to the brim with life. So a random sunflower that started in the compost on the inside found a random hole that one of the hens made sometime in the winter. We can't bring ourselves to cut that. It seems a little too beautiful. So anyway, but yeah, so as compost is finishing, we send it down through this pipeline. We planted these willows here last year to absorb a little bit of excess nutrient and keep this shaded. And we found that the hens like a little bit of willow leaf here or there. So it's a good opportunity to go through with pruners and shape this up every week or two and throw some free choice willow greens down that they can eat if they'd like. And then we crate up the compost and send it along. This last round was from compost about 5 weeks old. And then this material, with enough of that sawdust, went from raw food scraps to this in about 25 days, 30 days. Yeah, that's right, Mrs. Lady, you can poke in there. These new hens, they're still figuring out what this whole system's about, but they are more than willing to learn, and that's pretty sweet. Anyway, have some fun. This back corner is a little bit of a mess, but it is what it is. I think it's nice to show folks things that aren't exactly ideal. But we've got our milk crates temporarily blocking off some areas so we can have at least a little differentiation between different ages of compost. So this was all dumped in here this morning. That's a little extra cache of sawdust that we can bulk in as we need. And this was compost, raw food scraps that we dumped about 5 days ago. And with the amount of rain we're getting and just the ambient heat and the amount of agitation from the chickens and enough sawdust, I think we can get at a pace where we can go from raw food scraps to ready to leave from here in about 20 to 25 days. So that's a fast enough turnaround that this system can be incorporating things in a good way. It can feel pretty overwhelming in here and a little bit wild with this many hens, although I think both Sasha and I feel this way, and it'd be good to get feedback from folks, but overall it feels like our hens are happy and healthy. They seem to have very minimal amounts of strife. They spread through the landscape pretty evenly. They take a lot of time to relax and dust bathe and take naps. And I think all those things seem to tell a picture of hens that are happy where they are. And so we can handle some of the wildness and some of the excess nutrient and the physical challenges of maintaining this as so long as we know that our hens are happy. I feel really special, or it feels this to be a very special little scene. This is that little pond. It's hand dug, been here since day one back in 2015. And this has a tube that leads directly from the north side of our home, the roof line, which we're gonna have sheet metal put on pretty soon. But anyway, this comes right down, goes into this pond, the duckweed and the perennial celery, which are those beautiful aquatic edge plants, do in beautiful filtration of this water And I think the picture says things pretty clearly. The nutrient load is high, but it's balanced enough that all the plants that are here seem to be growing really nicely. So western sand cherry, very happy. This random motherwort, which is such a lovely plant. The black currants in here, there's aronia, and then this bomber of an elderberry. We have to keep cutting back periodically just so we can get through. But that's poised to offer up a monstrous crop of fruit and medicine for our hens in the next month or two. This low corner of the yard, which receives all of the extreme excess nutrient, and anytime we get a heavy rain, that nutrient-loaded water passes through all of these berms. The amount of jet fuel nutrition has been excessive enough that we've lost access to here. So there's a hazel in front of me that's put on, these are probably 5 or 6 hazelnuts that happens over and over and over again. It's so loaded, it's ready to break under the weight of that fruit. And it's leaning into the elderberry in a way where it's hard to get through. I need to come through with some pruners and do some serious cutting, but there's a plum in there. There's a whole bunch of black and red currants, way more hazelnuts. I haven't actually accessed that in about 2 weeks because the reality of getting through there, pardon the crazy camera work, but it'll give you a feel of what it's like to try to walk through this system. I think the only way I can get in is if I push under. And now I'm on the inside of this insanity. So on the absolute hottest days, the hens can get in here and be incredibly comfortable and relaxed. We don't really have access, but I think whatever grapes and currants and honeyberries and hazelnuts fall in this area, I'm completely happy to have that be for the hens and the chipmunks and the other wild creatures. We'll just try to bushwhack our way through once a season so we have a little access, and so there's a little bit more light for all the characters in here. I'm trying to get the rest of this last load of sawdust off the truck and into the chicken yard before the rains come again. Definitely coming back into a cooler, wetter cycle at the moment. I just thought it would be a good opportunity to share an update on the craziness that is our chicken system, that as wacky as it is and as much labor as it takes to maintain, feels pretty darn nice. We have way more eggs than we could ever know what to do with. We share with lots of friends and family. Way more compost than we know what to do with, and hens that came out of pretty rough backgrounds having a place to land for the rest of their life where they are respected, they're treated well, and that we appreciate the incredibly beautiful hard work that they do. So forgive the aspects of this that are kind of messy and wild and feral, and hopefully engage with the parts that feel compelling. And most importantly, if you're interacting with chickens in your landscape and you're thinking, oh, it'd be great to do some compost system or something like what you see in these videos, remember, you do not have to scrap everything you're doing in order to begin a process like this. You can have your system exactly as it is, but add a little bit of compost here or there, and maybe over time have it evolve. This is 7 years in the making, and it's still a work in progress, absolutely, and I'm sure it will evolve over time. Thanks for watching. Hope you all are well out there and staying cool and hydrated as much as possible. Be well.